Andy, day one of my home survival is so far so good. It's not been too bad. I was able to serve the kids nachos last night. So
Nice.
that was a good meal, healthy meal. I'm sure my wife would have approved. Tonight I'm thinking about tacos maybe. Tomorrow we've got like a lacrosse game, so we'll probably do something out then. So I'm gonna try to make it, Andy. I'm gonna get there. So
I believe in you, Dave. I've got confidence in you. I appreciate the way you're leaning into it, taking care of your home and your family. I
yeah.
believe in, I believe in you.
So far, so good. I mean, I don't have, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. So, but I won't say that I'm the pillar of enforcement, I guess. So it's fun. But yes, Andy, this week, exciting week for us. So my son's down in Texas. He's with his Virginia Tech club lacrosse team. They're in the national championship. Round one is today. They play Arizona State. If they win, they play their hated rivals, Liberty. So potentially, if Liberty wins too,
Potentially.
it's going to be a fun week. Hopefully, they'll do well down there. But my son, who started lacrosse at 4 years old, it's fun that he's culminating his playing days, I guess. Sure, you can play older, like old man leagues and all this other stuff, but really the reality is his playing days are effectively over. So it's a fun little journey through the years you
Yeah.
have with your kids, right? So
Yeah, super exciting capstone to his career. I'll tell you, a lot of those guys, I think, Dave, some of those better players, which I think your son certainly is, I think they are able to go on and give back so much, which is so valuable, I think, to parents. My sons got into lacrosse, and we got a coach for them, and it was one of my younger son's team coaches, who was a younger guy, great attitude, very good at lacrosse, played in college, played actually at South Carolina. And we were like, hey, do you want to give him some off-season lessons? And he sat there and worked with them and just was able to improve their game so much by giving them that time dedication. And he was out there playing lacrosse. Like he was having fun out there too, doing that. And so I think it's fun to see those guys continue from, being that little pipsqueak, learning how to cradle to
yeah.
getting to the other end of things and then passing on their lessons learned and experience and teaching the next generation of young, athletes. I think it's really fun. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen in the future here? But it's super exciting, super happy for your family and your son.
Yeah, and so you got the club lacrosse championships going on, and then you have the big Division 1 through 3 lacrosse championships also starting this weekend. Division 1 is like again, I think I talked about this before. It's the three big conferences: Big Ten, ACC, and Ivy League, and then it's just the automatic qualifiers. They're not as big. You don't get quite the upsets like you get in basketball, at least in the early rounds. Those three big conferences are really just strong, and so a couple years ago the big thing was that the Ivy League's got 5 teams in out of a 16 team field. This year they only got their automatic qualifier, and in fact the one team they had on the bubble lost out to Penn State, and Penn State took the last at large bid. So that'll be fun. I'll be watching that this weekend coming up. It's always fun, those round one
Yeah,
matchups and such. So anywho, Andy, but I digest. Digest. I
I
don't
mean,
think
you
digest.
probably are digesting,
I
but
am probably. But I want to talk about your shirt, Andy. We talked last week about big news you had on, and then now
yeah,
you've got this interesting,
yeah,
looks like Cookie Monster slash Detroit Lion or
right.
something. What's going on with your shirt there, Andy?
So Dave, this is the Lions of tradition where they bring their rookies in and they sort of paint the Lions logo. As they become Lions, they bring in the young class to do that. So last year, around March of 2023, newly at that time drafted rookie tight end Sam Laporta came in and painted, I should say, this for those that are seeing it on screen, this disastrous Lions slash Cookie Monster logo as his attempt at the line. You can see his name there, Sam Laporta, and so it's just been a hilarious joke for Lions fans that it's an absolutely terrible painting. I mean it's awful, but it's been a lot of fun. I've even got a Threads friend who wants to get it tattooed just as a sign of last year. But what made it awesome was Dave, as you know, I mean, I am rarely. at a loss for words on that end. I'm usually talk way too much. Right? If you get me started on a topic, as you often do on this podcast, I can run on way too long. I talk a lot, at events and things of that nature, and my mouth goes on and on and on. And so I'm rarely at a loss for words. But as you know, on Friday, some of our coworkers, our team, uh, completely threw me off and left me almost speechless, surprising me, showing up at my door and online on Zoom to wish me congratulations for my cancer results, for getting the clear on that. Totally unexpected. It was a sabotage. I was preparing for a work meeting, I thought. All of a sudden my bell rings. I'm like, oh man, should I get that? Let me go grab it. So I went out there and grabbed it and was completely surprised and somewhat befuddled by the fact that that was happening, and genuinely confused as what to even do next. Like, it was just so unexpected. So it was a very, very generous gesture from the team. I felt rude. In hindsight, I was telling you before we started recording, I didn't properly invite people in. I was just so confused by everything. It was a super thoughtful gesture. I was really humbled by it. And along with the surprise visit and kind words and congratulations, along with a very nice cake, I also got this awesome shirt for a team that I get to work with, and a team that knows that I'm wearing Lions merch probably 75-80% of the time. So they indulged me in my enjoyment there. So it was very, very thoughtful. So I thought it was only appropriate that today I celebrate that and wear this fine shirt, not just for the team, Dave, but really for America, to appreciate Sam Laporta's outstanding artwork.
Well, now I know the backstory behind it, so
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
then, I guess. But and I was able to join via Zoom for the call, as was many others. And I will just tell you, Andy, I was very happy to be part of that and to see the smiles on everybody's faces to have gotten you, surprise for one. That was awesome. And then just to see how much, love and respect they have for you is also very fun as well. And so it was a very cool moment. And we're glad to be part of it. And shout out to Maya Saab who organized everything there. And it was just a great event and great opportunity. So, all right, Andy. Let's talk about again, as much as we don't want to talk about it, they just give us these things on a silver platter that we can go to. Um, there's a couple of topics I want to talk about. One, our esteemed QBH, she continues to. She did call the motion to vacate this week. I think there's a
Nice.
date set this week that we're going to have for a vote. Everyone's coming out and saying how stupid and idiotic this is, but this is again her effort to call people, let them see where they vote. We already have a democratic leadership is what she's calling it, attesting to that. Speaker Johnson is already a Democrat and not really a true Republican like she is. And of course, all her, even now, her Republican form, her fellow Republicans are calling her other things. Fox News is coming out and calling her idiots, and it's just not a good look for her. But what the heck does she care? She's doubling down, Andy. So I don't know where to go with that one, but
Yeah, I mean, she's committed to this. I think it's the burn down the house mentality. I mean,
yeah.
maybe she envisions this being the start of some type of uh, I don't want to say resurgence because it's never really fully surged, but electoral push to her brand of Republican Party politics, and that is going to lead to the ouster of all these faux Republicans as she sees them. Um, or she's just pissed because she's fallen out of likes with the team, and she's no longer being embraced and celebrated by her peers, and she's just like, screw it, I'm just going to take it, just destroy everything on my way out the door as best I can. Either way, it's not good for her. I mean, she's really sort of broken the back of the little support that she had left among her peers. It's messy, and even though there's some interesting takes on how maybe the GOP is moving back to a more reasonable position in some respects, and the Democrats are also trying to maintain order, in Congress by working with them. It's going to be messy regardless. I mean, it's going to be messy regardless. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this week. I think it's going to be quieter and faster. It's not going to go anywhere. But it'll be interesting to see these inter-party politics and just the mess of them. She's a weakened politician. She was never a very strong politician, but she was a loud voice that was getting a lot of attention. And I think everybody's kind of grown tired of it and is ready to move on. But she demands a spotlight, and the news media is happy to indulge her because they want something to write about, and she's happy to be written about.
Yeah, so we went from space lasers to this motion to vacate. So we'll see where we go next,
So,
and only time will tell. Andy, another story came up the end of last week, specifically a congressman, Henry Cellular, I think it's Cellular, and his wife were charged with bribery, unlawful foreign influence, and money laundering schemes. Andy, I hate to roll my eyes at this kind of stuff, but I mean, aren't they all? I mean, it does. I mean, it seems like shouldn't all of these guys have this? And if you're dumb enough to get caught here, then maybe you deserve to go to jail. I mean, let me just read some of this. According to the court documents, beginning in at least December 2014, continuing through at least 2021. Congressman and his wife allegedly accepted approximately 600,000 in bribes from two foreign entities, an oil and gas company wholly owned and controlled by the government in Azerbaijan, and a bank headquartered in Mexico City. The bribe payments were allegedly laundered pursuant to sham consulting contracts through a series of front companies and middlemen in the shell companies owned by him, the congressman, or the wife, who performed little to no legitimate work under the contracts in exchange for bribes paid by the Azerbaijani oil and gas company. He allegedly agreed to use his office to influence U.S. foreign policy in favor of Azerbaijan, who, if you don't know about Azerbaijan, they have a long running historical conflict with Armenia. There's a lot of challenges and conflict in that area. Um, Holy fucking unbelievable, Andy. I mean, this is just I don't know even where to go with this. I mean, as I watched Star Wars over the weekend, I'm
nice.
reminded of how the Galactic Empire started, and don't trust politicians, right? Because of all the ways they can be influenced. But those were the messages of George Lucas, Andy. Apparently, the good congressman didn't heed any of those. So
Yeah, I mean, it is the second Democratic congressman indicted, I think, in the last year, right? The gentleman from New Jersey as well. One, for all the screaming that some parts of the Republican Party do about, the DOJ is
yeah,
weaponized and politically biased. I mean, they're prosecuting Democrats, right? And the DOJ is doing their job. Sometimes that takes aim at corrupt Republicans, sometimes it takes aim at corrupt Democrats. It did in this case. And it's just pathetic to see. I mean, this guy was briefly Texas Secretary of State, right? I
yeah.
mean, I mean, these guys have, they've had important jobs, they've been in politics. It's just so unnecessary. And I'm so happy when they get caught. It's bad enough that these guys go to Congress and just suck and do a lot just short of bribes, right? They get a lot of paid opportunities. They milk that job and position and role. And like we said many times before, people leave Congress a lot wealthier than they did entering Congress, which is not the intent of serving our nation. So it's already, questionable for what seems to be the vast majority of elected officials there. I don't want to speak, with certainty on that. There's probably a lot of people trying to do the right thing. But then you've got these jerks that go even a step beyond and just genuinely, take these bribes, these false positions for their wives. Same thing in New Jersey, right? And it's just so dirty and so corrupt. And this happens all over the world, and we know it happens in America. It's just sad to see. And what makes me grateful is when you see guys like this get busted, get prosecuted, get thrown out of office, ideally go to jail for some time. Like it's a testament to the good things that are still working our democracy, despite all the stuff that seems to be going off the rails. So, thanks Henry for being a complete ass for putting our country several steps behind your own self-interest. It's sad to see, but that's where we are, Dave. That's where we are, and realistically, that's probably where we've always been. There's always going to be some corruption. It's just sad to see.
Yeah, it's funny though, the same people who are crying corruption of foreign governments and stuff, like Ukraine is what are we really doing with the money in Ukraine and
Yeah.
all this other stuff and look at Afghanistan and Iraq, they're all corrupt governments. Hey, look, what's the adage about throwing stones at glass houses, right? I mean, it's just one of those things where you just are reminded. But again, to yeah, the weaponization of the DOJ clearly works both ways, right? I mean, maybe it's just they're doing their job, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's how that works. Andy, let's go to another story. Trump, it was in, the former president was in Wisconsin, and he made I wouldn't say it's an alarming remark because he makes them all the time, but he made he questioned how the results were going to work in Wisconsin and whether he'd accept the results. He said, if everything's honest, I'll gladly accept the results. I don't change on that. If it's not, you have to fight for the right of your country." I guess he's trying to go off the Beastie Boys there. In the same interview, Trump repeated the false claim that he won Wisconsin in the 2020 election, saying all of the things that have been found out showed that he actually won,
Yeah.
despite the fact that he lost by 20,000 votes there. Again, Andy, this is like the biggest cop out you can have. I mean, because again, you don't have to prove anything; you can just make these false claims. But despite the fact that every contested lawsuit, every judge who's ever ruled on whether or not there was fraud in the 2020 election, there's not been one that has come back and said Trump actually was right. Yet they continue to repeat these false claims. And again, the hard part with, if everything's done right, I'll accept the results. What does
Yeah.
that mean? What exactly does that mean? If and what have you found in a Wisconsin that made you believe that you had actually won? These are things that this is just the continued ass fuckery of the former president.
Yeah, one thing about Trump is he's been pretty consistent, right? So on
As an
Wisconsin,
ass, consistent as an
yeah,
ass.
yeah. With Wisconsin, that's obviously not true. Like that statement that he won Wisconsin is 100% not true. He lost Wisconsin. Like that's reality. On the statement he made, look, he's doing a great job of being honest about what to expect if he's reelected.
Yeah.
His authoritarian nature, his vindictiveness, his desire for power and vengeance, his self-interest. Like he's telling America what to expect from him, and so like we shouldn't be surprised. And in this statement, like he's telling us what to expect in November. And he's saying, again, as you said, if everything's honest, I'll gladly accept the results. Under no circumstances is he going to lose the election and say everything was honest, I accept the results, right? I mean, if the powers that be come out and say, we're calling the election for Joe Biden, the day after the election or the night of the election, whatever it ends up being, like under no circumstances, Donald Trump going to be like, oh yeah, I checked everything, it all checks out good. I lost. Thanks, America. Congratulations, Joe. Like that's not going to happen. And so he's saying, hey, if it's not fair, like you said, you have to fight for the right of the country. I don't know what the hell the right of the country is. I assume that means him being president, but that's very dangerous, right? Because we saw this already play out. Like we saw him say, "Fight to keep me in office." We saw January 6th play out, and even though now people are trying to suggest that he, didn't really incite that violence, that he shouldn't be held responsible for what his peaceful protesting supporters did that day, he did. He cheer that on, and he's already setting the stage for more of that come November, unless he's coronated president and king, by the electorate. He may win the election, Dave. He may win, and if he does, he'll accept the results. But if he loses, which he also may happen, he's not going to accept the results. And his language here is dangerous, and it's scary, and it's pathetic, because just like this asswipe from Texas, nothing's more important to Donald Trump than Donald Trump. And to hell with the country, to hell with stability, to hell with what happens. I'll be president, or America be damned. And he's just telling us how he honestly feels. He's being a straight shooter on this, Dave. He's telling it as it is.
Yeah. Well, it kind of makes me go back to that line from Dennis Green. We are who they thought they were. Yeah,
Yeah,
That's
that's right.
Donald Trump is, and we talked about this separately. Putin, like when we talked about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Putin told us what he was going to do. We just never believed him, right?
Yeah.
Trump is telling us and I think this is a great point you're making. Trump is telling us what he's going to do. and don't come crying when your rights or privileges are changed under him. And I think that's going to be, as much as the rah rah sounds great, the impacts are going to be far greater, and not in a positive way. I think we both stand on that. Okay, Andy, anything else on politics you want to hit before I switch topics here?
I'll just say a good article, Dave. David French wrote an article over the weekend. David French is a writer for the New York Times, a libertarian-leaning Christian, but an adamant Trump loather. Really not a fan of where the Republican Party has gone. Those who traditionally voted, Republican in the past, I believe. But he wrote an interesting article. We talked about QBH earlier, and his article is that QBH is not as powerful as she thinks she is. Just sort of looking at, is there potential for Republican Party to reclaim sort of itself without Donald Trump at the helm, right? If you take away the cult of personality around Donald Trump, or all his little hanger-ons, these little screaming banshees that cheer him on and emulate his nonsense, do they really have any long sustainable power and influence? And he sort of says maybe they don't. Like, just seeing what's kind of happening with Speaker Johnson now, some efforts at bipartisanship, maybe this is more about Trump as a anomaly than it is a complete change in the Republican Party. I don't know if that's true. Interesting perspective. David French often writes well. I appreciate the thought there. Time will tell. Time will tell. Is there a second Sith Lord, to step in when Palpatine gets thrown into the pit, Dave? We don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I know we've had these periods where we get uber concerned about certain, politicians, not just in the United States, but around the world. And we think, is this going to be a long-standing trend? Back before Putin took over, we were concerned about ultra nationalists,
Yeah.
right, that were rising all over the globe, and then you see that peter away. But yeah, I think it's going to be. Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. But Andy, good transition by you. You mentioned Palpatine. We kind of dropped some Star Wars hints here and there. It was May the 4th was on Saturday. So for all the Star Wars lovers, geeks, nerds alike, May the 4th be with you is a big day. So a lot of things come out. There's a lot of, obviously, the shows are all over the TV on the weekend. So I want to just take a minute, Andy. I wanted to kind of talk about these Star Wars movies
Okay.
and
All right.
say, let's do our own, because a lot of rankings came out. I'm not going to ask you to rank 1 through 11 or 1 through 9, but I want to say, Andy, give me your top three, and then give me your worst one, the one that you hate the most.
Oof.
So uh, I can start if you want time to think about it, but is that sounding like it? Can you do that, Andy?
Probably not, but I'll
Oh,
try.
okay.
I'll try.
Okay.
We should acknowledge. I mean, it was a big weekend. It was May the 4th and Cinco de Mayo,
That's
Saturday,
that's right.
Sunday. That's a big weekend. I mean, that's a lot of celebrating. And I mean, it's given that everybody celebrates either one of those, but both of them. It's a big first weekend of May. So hope everybody's recovered from their Star Wars slash Fiesta celebrations over the weekend.
Yeah, that is a fair point. Fair point. All right, Andy. So let me get okay. So the question is, do you want to go 1 through 9, just the trilogy ones, or do you want to add in like Rogue One and Solo into the mix? What do you,
That's really tricky. So I think in this modern time, I mean, I've seen definitive lists that don't include so much of the Star Wars, collection now, right? People leave out all sorts of things that are out there from the animation to
yeah.
current series, The Mandalorian, and others. So it's really hard. If you're just going to go just released motion pictures, I say you throw them all in there. I say include
Okay.
Solo, include
All right.
Rogue One. Let's go for it.
All right, so let's do all, like, you can throw in the TV shows, you can throw in cartoons, you can throw in anything you want, Andy. So let's
All right.
just do the
All right.
top three, and then let's do the worst one. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna go with my number one is Empire. Like, I think that's like definitively, I can repeat almost every line in that movie still to this day, almost being 50. So like I love that movie. It's always been my favorite. So Empire Strikes Back is my number one. My number two, like very close behind it, is and not Andor, but Rogue One. I mean, you can do the extension of Andor on top of that and makes it even better because that was such a great series.
Yeah,
So I love both of those. And then I struggle with number three. I like a lot of them as you go. A lot of people go New Hope or something like that. I like Revenge of the Sith, but then I was watching it last night and like the first part of that is really not good.
yeah,
And I struggled with it, but the ending is so good. Like the last half of the movie is so good, starting with Order 66, but the first part was a little challenging, but I'm still gonna stick with Revenge of the Sith. I do like that movie. And so those were my top three, Andy. Where would you? I mean, Mandalorian is in there too. Like the first season of Mandalorian was so good.
yeah.
I can bring you in cold, or I can bring you in warm. So those kind of like just good stuff. But those would be my top three with Mandalorian close behind.
Yeah, so and those are really good top three. And I mean, guys, there's probably, I would say, there's probably about six, seven, eight that are all like
Yeah.
top tier Star Wars stuff. And there's some really good stuff. But you're right, some of the like the last trilogy, like I really enjoyed it in some respects, and I really hated it in other respects. There's a lot to like. The actors I thought were great.
Yep.
There's some parts of story that I really enjoyed, but it was so crowded. Like they were trying to do so much so fast, and at times it seemed fast, and at times it seemed slow. Some things I loved, some things I hated. So I can't put those newest ones in the top, even though there's a lot that I genuinely like. I've got to say, more than anything, Adam Driver I think was fantastic. I liked
Yep.
Kylo
Yep.
Ren. I liked his conflict. I thought he was both a good serious bad guy, good guy, and funny. I thought it was just really well done. So I really enjoyed those. But if I can't put him in the top three, if I have to rank them, I think I would go. I'll go from three up. I would put Rogue One as number three. Great
Okay.
movie, and I could switch these up anytime you ask me, to be honest with you. But I think Rogue One would be number three. I think everybody just it was a very well done movie and such a clever way to precede Episode Four. And there's a lot of ways to fumble that. It was done really well. So Rogue One, number two. I'll put Empire at number two. Great movie, and again, I could flip these around. But I mean, everybody loves Empire. It's just such a win in so many respects. But I'm going to give the number one spot to Return of the Jedi. And I know it's not everybody's
Ooh.
favorite, but I think, it's hard to conclude a series, right? It's almost always a letdown.
Yep.
Jedi wasn't a letdown. I mean, I think it was really well done. It connected the storyline well. You had major things happening, right? I mean, Yoda kind of dies, right? A significant event. You've got the turning of Darth Vader, the death of Palpatine, Luke becoming a master, the death of Jabba. I mean, there's so much happening in that movie, and it works. It works. It all works. I mean, starting out from the beginning, with the unfreezing of Han Solo, Princess Leia playing, warrior sneaking in there. It was just really well done. Luke Skywalker showing up at the palace, very well done. Everything was really, really good. A little hokier than Empire. Empire had that nice darker edge to it, but man, it's hard to finish a great series. And I thought, like, if nothing had ever followed Return of the Jedi, it would probably stand as I think just one of the best series of all time. It kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit now because everything's happened since, but just a great movie, a great movie. So I've got to put Jedi as one.
Okay, there you go. Well, so that goes into like now the like the worst one here, and
Yeah,
you were and you kind of spoke to it. Like the last three, I loved Adam Driver. I like Ray. I thought she was a good character as well.
yeah,
I really enjoy. I will enjoy watching a movie about her coming up, or whenever they decide to release it. The storylines were just awful. I mean, I can watch The Force Awakens was I can go back and rewatch that movie, but the other two are just for the most part largely unwatchable. But so my number one is The Last Jedi. It's arguably like it's atrocious. Now, there are some people who have this as their number one, and to those people, I would say you're fucking crazy because there's not like, and they'll sit there and say, well, they took a lot of risk. They were gonna do this. They were trying to change the way it worked, and look. I'm sorry, but it's just bullshit because like the stories were so terrible. Everything about it was awful. And I tried to go back and watch some of it, and I just can't get through it.
yeah,
Princess, like, and when you make shit up about the Force, like midstream, like Leia's dead. she's dead. She's out in space. Let her die.
Yeah.
That would have been a great moment. But yet somehow she woke up and she forced herself back in, and then the shit about like taking over the ship, and then getting the ship taken back over, like all of this stuff was ass. It was just ass, everything about it. But I love the characters. I mean,
Yeah.
I loved who those guys were, and there were some decent scenes, but like the casino scene and the running through the fucking thing on horses. That was awful. I mean, only to be usurped by the Rise of Skywalker, where they're running horses on a fucking Star Destroyer. I mean, what are we doing? And so those things were just awful, and so I refuse to really acknowledge them as part of like good stuff. So, anyways, that's my last one, The Last Jedi. Andy, it sucked.
It's fair, I enjoyed it, take away some things that like, I mean, you hit some of the points. There's a lot to like be irritated by. If you just sat back and was like, was I entertained? There were times when I was entertained. And again, I like the actors, and that's consistent throughout all three trilogies. Like I like the cast. I
Yeah,
like who they casted. They did a good job, even when they weren't playing particularly good roles. Like in the last trilogy, it's some really good characters that, some got more attention than others at different times, but they were all well done. Like the team did a really good job. Where I get stuck is I think probably more popularly agreed to as the worst of the nine major movies plus Rogue One and Solo. It, Little kid star actors like main characters, it just doesn't work, right? And so you go back to the Phantom Menace, Dave, which just turned 25, we should say. It turns 25 this year. It was released in May of 1999, right? And we were all so excited that they were actually picking up the Star Wars saga again. And we went and we saw the Phantom Menace, and you've got little kid Anakin Skywalker. You've got Jar Jar. You've got I forget their names right now off the top of my head, but the guys underwater, the cartoony frog guys.
yeah,
And it's like,
yeah.
what am I watching here now? Is this, what is this movie? And again, there was some really good acting in it. I mean, there's some really good actors in there, and even the kid didn't do a bad job, right? But it just wasn't a good movie. There was some fun stuff, right? The race was fun. Some of the backstory was interesting. Some of it wasn't. Some of it was kind of lame. But overall, probably the hardest to enjoy of the movies. It's like worth watching just to watch it, but not really good. Not really good. I think The Phantom Menace is probably almost universally the most hated, despite your bold statement there. But I'm gonna have to agree with that one. I mean, happy 25th anniversary. Thanks for re-exciting the series, but kind of sucks.
I see. I might take a different perspective. Like the Darth Maul battle at the end was
Yeah,
so good.
great. Yeah,
Was
yeah,
great. But yeah, I see where a little bit because I remember my wife got me tickets and we went to opening night, and
yeah,
it was like the line was wrapped around the movie theater. It was like a fun experience, and then you kind of left like, yeah. So,
yeah.
meh,
Which is probably inevitable, right? I mean, like it was almost
yeah.
inevitable. Like we all had our ideas we wanted to see. It was going to be super hard to satisfy people, so I get that too. And there was some good stuff. Darth Maul, like that was awesome. There was some good stuff, but at the same time,
I think it's fun though, is like my kids think the original those that trilogy was the best ones. Like it is just it's just weird like how they come into it, and they
yeah.
love it because of the Clone Wars, all the cartoon stuff that went along with it. But Andy, I know we're running long on this podcast, but that was a little fun way to start our week. I am going to be solo again this week at the end of this week, but we'll have one more day with you on Wednesday, Andy. So I'll look forward to
Well, I look forward to it too. Yeah, good talk. From at least we ended on positive note this time around. Happily
that.
talking Star Wars any day. Much more interesting. The intergalactic Congress is much more interesting than the nonsense we have at home.
It's absolutely true. Absolutely true. All right, Andy, with that, I'll catch up with you next time.